feel like much of the writer lately.
Your books change people's lives.
Has something I've written ever changed your life?
Absolutely. My dining room table was wobbly as hell
my gosh.
before your last book came out. It was like perfect.
Mr. Jeffrey Wright, sir, congratulations.
Thank you.
I am so happy that we now get to say Oscar-nominated actor forever as your epitaph with this film. I loved the last time I got to speak to you, you were on stage with Keith David and Mr. Ortiz, and I felt like it was just such a communal moment for you to be able to celebrate this film with people that you haven't got to talk to as much, but were so integral into the production of it. Talked about that moment, because I know you talked about having both those actors on this was really important to you.
Everyone
Yeah.
was important to the overall in this film. We had such an amazing cast. Keith David, I have known for many years from New York. I first saw him in George Wolfe's Jelly's Last Jam with Gregory Hines back in '91, maybe, and he played Chimney Man, and I mean, just he had this walk and this presence that was just so magnificent. And we've been friends ever since. And John Ortiz and I have known each other as well from the theater in New York for many, many years. We shared a green room at the Public Theater, he on one play, I on another play, but we'd never worked together. It was an opportunity to work in relative to those two, with two actors that I've admired both as artists and as men for many years. But everyone on this film, there's a guy, I believe his name is Ryan Doyle, young local actor from Boston. He plays Ned in the bookstore.
Oh, wow.
Perfect. I walked on set, I looked at him, I said, wow, that's Ned. The casting was just so on point, and everyone just made my job easier by their presence and elevated what I was able to do. So, yeah, that the film is recognized for Best Picture is reflective of the work of everyone in front of the camera and everyone behind the camera, and I think it makes a perfect sense, and we are all grateful for that.
Yeah. 5 Oscar nominations, including for the score and Sterling, Cord, and Best Picture. But talk about that morning, because look, I mean, I saw a bootleg copy of you in Angels in America. Don't tell anyone I said that, before it was even out.
Why are you telling me?
I was like, sorry. Well, I was in Texas and they didn't let me go to New York. So I had to make sure I was a theater
you
kid.
saw it.
I got to see it. But then I got to see you in the television adaptation, and I've seen your work,
You mean you saw the play?
Yeah.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, they had a bootleg, literally, I guess back when the time when they had people filming
wow.
of you
Oh,
doing
wow.
that.
Oh,
Till
wow.
now, yeah,
Okay.
when you're a theater kid living in nowhere, Texas, you have to get very inventive on how you can see theater.
That's interesting. Okay.
But
Authority, security.
it's fair. I will. It's a shameful past, but I was a kid.
Yeah.
But looking at it from that and your early days in theater to now, how satisfying was it that morning to hear them call your name? And take me to that morning for you.
Well, yeah, it was pretty cool. I thought we all stood a good chance of being recognized, and I didn't watch the ceremony because I didn't want any unexpected, sudden damage to any screen that I was taking it in on if the news had been, not to my liking. So I was wandering around my house. I was in my office. I had the phone on the coffee table there, and it started to shine, and it seemed that good news was coming in, and so, yeah, I was pleased. And I looked up, I saw a picture of my mother that's prominent on a shelf behind my desk, and we had a moment. I was raised by my mother and my aunt. I called my aunt Naomi, who had come to live with us after my mom passed away a few years ago, but now has moved down to Virginia in a house that I was able to build for one of the greatest things I've ever done in my life. She was down there, but she has difficulty dialing phone now because her eyesight is not what it once was. But I called her up. I hadn't heard from her. I said, "Hey, Nay, did you hear any news this morning?" And she said, "Oh, yeah, I heard that. Yeah, that's great. Congratulations," she said. "But you should have been nominated years ago." I'm not sure if that was an indictment of me or the thing, because my mom and I are pretty tough, but she was very happy. It was a fun morning, and celebrated by taking my daughter, by hopping in the truck and driving her up to New England to go back to school. that was my big celebration.
I love that. I think everyone talks about like the text message blows up, and it's sort of like when, you know, you have a baby or something, everybody thinks of you that morning and they sort of like reach out. And this group of folks that you are now nominated with, like this is your class, and it's sort of like this is graduation day in a little bit. Can you talk about maybe if you've gotten to chat with any of your fellow castmates, and maybe not the ones that are in your film, but folks that you've gotten to sort of go on this ride with? Because let's be real, you've done a lot of movies, but you kind of are all in this experience together.
The best part of this process of getting the film out in front of the Academy to be seen, and we've had incredible support from Orion, Amazon, MGM to make that happen. But the best part about it is that I've got to run into actors that I admire, who've seen the film and have expressed their appreciation for it and for my work and my work over the years, or actors that I worked with, you know, during the course of my career but hadn't seen in a while, who said, you know, yeah, well done. I mean, that's been really cool. That's been really touching. I mean, I ran into Eric Roberts.
Wow.
And he was like, oh man, this movie, this one. I'm like, whoa, man. I mean, Eric Roberts, for me, you know, Pope of Greenwich Village was like a central film, you know, and he came up and said, wow. And I'm like, oh, dude, I'd never met him before. So things like that. Yeah, it's been a really interesting process. It's been a bit like an extended episode of This Is Your Life, you know? But it's been touching at times. And yeah, I'm grateful.
Can you stick around and help with Mother?
I gotta get home.
It's 8 a.m.
I'm not flying the plane, Mom.
Mr. Sterling K. Brown,
What's up?
back on the Awards Tour podcast. This was not, you didn't think that this was going to be the thing. Like you were a bit of a naysayer maybe on your own like ability to do this.
I don't want to say naysayer. I thought there was a lot of good performances this year. And I thought that in just terms of real estate of the performance, maybe it wasn't enough screen time. I felt good about the performance. I really did. don't get me wrong. I was like, hey, Brown, you did your thing. That was good, right? But I felt like, oh, maybe people who had a little bit more to do would possibly get into there. Because, you know, you watch the Gold Derbies. Brown be keeping up with what's popping. I was like, I'm falling just on the outside. And I was like, that's cool. And so the night before the nomination, I talked to Michael Geiser, my publicist, and my manager, Jen Wiley Stockton. I said, gang, don't y'all call me in the morning and ask me if I'm okay. I'm okay. I got kids to get to school. They gotta be fed and watered and nurtured and loved on. I'm gonna be all right. So the fact that my phone had died didn't mean anything to me because I was like, you know what? I'm gonna celebrate whoever got nominated and it's gonna be cool. And then when I had the 126 messages on my phone when I charged it, I was like, I'll be damned.
Yeah.
They were like, look, you may be right, and that's great, but if it does happen, you know, that'll be great too. And I was like, yeah, cool. And they were right.
They were right.
They were right.
And I'm really glad they were like, no, you're going to this thing because this can happen. Like we're gonna put you on the thing.
They did do that.
Because I will say your Graham Norton interview has kind of gone all over everywhere where you're just like, cause I think you might as well be his publicist, Robert Downey Jr. Because that quote where you're just like, he's gonna win, it's fine. And so like maybe you should be on Gold Derby.
Maybe. I mean, listen. I've been. If he doesn't, I'll be surprised.
Okay.
Put it that way.
Okay.
And surprises have happened before.
Fair.
But you would be too, wouldn't you?
I would absolutely.
Thank you
be.
very
Yes.
much.
No.
I just need validation so people don't think that I'm going crazy. I know what I'm talking about.
Let's talk a little bit about just this kind of cool moment because you're here at the nominee luncheon and you're going to get to go inside and see RDJ and Mark and all of your sort of like fellow nominees. And I know like you and your wife went to the Academy Gala. These are kind of great days for actors because you don't get a lot of these days where you get to just have a day of celebrating other people in your craft. What are you most looking forward to once you get inside? Anybody you're trying to maybe be like, I haven't talked to so-and-so in a while or haven't talked to this person at all?
I haven't talked to Mr. De Niro in a while. I did a movie with him and Al Pacino called Righteous Kill.
Yeah.
And it's the one that nobody watched.
I do know Righteous Kill.
Did you? But like I played the.
I didn't say I watched it. I said I know it.
You know it.
I know it.
That's what I'm saying. There's Godfather. There's Heat. Ooh, and then there's Righteous Kill. I was in the one. but to be able to say that like I'm nominated along with these individuals. I did a movie with Gosling. I did a movie called Stay, directed by Mark Forster. Back in the day, had a small part up in there or whatnot. But it's sort of cool to like have been in these films with them, small parts no one would remember, and now to be nominated alongside them.
We talked to you very early, like the film I think hadn't even gotten into wide release when we first talked to you about it. And so you've had great moments with the film since then. And it is, I think you may have seen our video we put out where we talked about what was the last movie that made folks laugh. Your movie was the #1 one. Everybody was talking about how much they made it laugh. And so being here at the Academy, not saying they have a bias, but it's a little harder for comedies to be here. What has been the most satisfying part for you being on this sort of like, because this is like your class. You guys went to camp together to try and like get to this moment. And this is kind of like as close to graduation day as you can get. So what's been the most satisfying moment?
That's a good question. There's been a lot of fun. I love being on stage with Jeffrey and Erica in particular because they both have very strong takes on their characters and they're somewhat at odds with one another, but that's why they didn't wind up together. Spoiler alert. You can edit that out. They don't wind up together then in the movie. And so it's interesting to see like a very sort of like strong black man and woman be in staunch defense of their characters with one another and sort of be like just on at odds with one another, but it makes sense because they don't end up together. I celebrate Cord. He is such a kind, warm, intelligent, thoughtful human being that he wrote the script. And the reason why he was able to attract the talent that he got from it was because we're like, ooh, I want to tell that story, right? Like you don't get Jeffery Wright to just do anything. Jeffery Wright he can do a lot of different things. So you have to have something on the page that really pulls him out, right? To have Leslie, myself, Erica, Issa, Ortiz killing the game in this thing, like I'm so happy for him because he's a true talent. He's gonna be doing it, and this is just his first one directing. It's going to get better, and it's nice to be on the ground floor of that.
I know you got to get out of here because you got to do a whole bunch of stuff too, but there was also a little bit of controversy about the SAG. Look, you're the one that tells these stories, and they're great stories when you go on here, but the SAG Awards with your wife. Oh, yeah. Like, she's already had her clapback verse a bit on this. So where do we stand now that, you know, you're Oscar nominated? I'm guessing she's going to be your date.
She played me. I want that for the record. She played me. She still gets to go. Because I love her and I'm not that petty. I'm not saying I'm not petty. I'm not that petty. Because I still got to sleep with her at night and she gets mad if I don't take her. So no,
let's reset the idea. So the idea being your wife was the first in the family to be nominated. She got nominated for a Screen Actors Guild and she didn't let you come with her to her nomination. And so you were like, if I was different.
Jack, she didn't. I want to help sound. She didn't take me. And she acted like, guys, I gotta let y'all know, she acted like it was a legitimate way to go. She's like, well, I gotta figure out how to network and maybe if I bring my managers, he can introduce me to people. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. But if I tried, Jackie, if I tried.
No, I mean, by the way, you made the right decision. I'm not in any way like saying that you're wrong.
I want to stay married. At the end of the day, I want my marriage to succeed so I know better.
You know what? And I'm just going to leave it at this because I dig your wife. I think you're great, but I really dig your wife.
I know.
She gave you babies. Like, that's like in the stacks of the cards. Like, that's, you know. You
gave each other.
Did you carry them? It's like, I know men don't want to hear this.
I got the chromosomes. You know what I'm saying? If Brown brings the fertilizer. There it goes. I'll do something. She gave me babies.
I'm sorry. She carried them in her body.
She gave me babies, and so for that, I don't get to complain about anything ever in life.
And that is why you're a happily married man, sir.
No, I'm being sarcastic. I still get to complain.
Last couple questions.
Yes.
We already know where you were Oscars morning. Who was your favorite phone call? Who was your favorite of the 120 text messages? Who was your favorite person that reached out? Because it is like a little bit, I'm thinking of Sterling. Because you were the first name, too, that was called.
It's first name. It's cool. When I listened to it, I heard people clap, and that was very, very sweet. A friend of mine from college, I was the best man at his wedding. His name is Phil Kim, Dr. Phil Kim. He's a urologist. He called me, he goes, dude. Now he called me because he had just watched Biosphere, and he'd already watched American Fiction, right? And he goes, dude, it's like, you're a good actor, man. I was like, thanks, dude. And he's one of two people, so I have to set the stage. Him and my very good friend, Olivier Théard, and we've all been in each other's weddings together. Senior year at Stanford University, people were legitimately concerned about SKB. They're like, dude, you're not going to class as much as you should be going to. Like, what's going on? I was doing a lot of plays and stuff. I was like, listen, fellas, I got it figured out. I'm gonna go to grad school. I'm gonna be an actor. Like, I know it, I see it, it's clear. And they're like, okay, you have a plan. And I was like, yeah, I got a plan. There's a doctor and a lawyer who are coming at me, and they just want to make sure, like, you're gonna do something with your life. I'm like, I'm gonna do something with my life, right?
To Stanford.
Because I'd left economics behind so I could go into drama, right? So for him to come back and he's like, dude, I'm so proud of you. Like, I remember when we came into the bedroom and we were concerned, but you knew. And to see all the things that you've done to this point and to see you get the recognition that you deserve, it's like, I'm proud of you, man. And we don't get too verklempt in front of each other or whatnot because we try to be real dudeish with it. But I was like, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Editors, they want a black book.
They have one. I'm black, and it's my book. Look at what they expect us to write.
Would you read an excerpt?
Yo, Sharonda, where you be going in a hurry like that?
Congratulations,
Thank
Cord.
you so much.
There's something to be said for if you get Oscar nominated on your debut film, first time behind the camera, also first time doing a feature screenplay. It's kind of like, okay, dude, like you're really coming out the gate with this. So break down that morning for you. What was it like? Because it's been on a journey for us. Like, I mean,
Yeah. You've been there since the beginning, really, literally, since Toronto. I have high anxiety, and so I knew that I couldn't be awake during the announcement or else I would just pace a hole through my floor. And so I knocked myself out with the Xanax at like 3 a.m. on Monday night to make sure that I sort of didn't wake up. And I slept for about 4 hours. I finally woke up at 7 a.m. LA time, and I had 228 missed text messages. And so I felt like something good had happened or the world was coming to an end. Fortunately, it was the former.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Of those several hundred or a couple hundred text messages, who was your favorite one that you got to? Because I feel like it's a moment where like people you haven't seen in a long time are thinking Cord. Right?
Yeah. To be honest, I haven't checked them yet. I swear. And I now have 340. I haven't. It's so overwhelming. It's just too overwhelming. It's like, it's already sort of like I'm trying to negotiate my life these past couple weeks, and it's already feels overwhelming in sort of like my real world, and I can't get into the digital world yet. But I will say that Hollywood Shuffle is a huge influence on me in this and on this film, and I would say that my favorite sort of interaction that morning, besides talking to my father, was Robert Townsend called me at 8 in the morning, and he said, I don't normally wake up for the announcements, but he said I set my alarm this morning to watch live to make sure that you got recognized. And it was like, I teared up. It was sort of like a real special moment for me. He's become like a real advocate and a friend. And that was like a full circle moment for me.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much.
He's a really special guy.
One thing I also wanted to ask you is, I know that you, before you even went into the television world, you were a journalist, so like great inspiration. I'm just gonna try and rob you bar for bar if I
Please
can.
do.
But that's like a difficult jump, and I think I've heard you talk about how you kind of talked to some of the people that maybe you had worked with as a journalist before you made that leap. Who were some of those people? Like, who, when you were deciding, okay, I may want to go make stuff, instead of just commenting on stuff. Yeah. Who are you reaching out to as sort of like, because I think like with a lot of us, it's not that you don't think you can, it's just you need a little, something to hold on to.
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't have any sort of guides because it was, there was, the only one that I really knew about was David Simon, and I didn't know how to get in contact with David Simon. So it was just sort of like largely on my own. I think that in recent years, we've seen more novelists getting into screenwriting, and we've seen more journalists getting into screenwriting. It's just kind of, it's starting to take from this talent pool that sort of these other talent pools to bring them into entertainment. And so I didn't really have an idol that I could look up to in that way. I wish that I would have, but I think that, there's also kind of help, I think, in ignorance. I think that sometimes it's good to just enter a thing blindly and not really know what you're doing. And that is how I entered. I sort of like entered just being like, well, you need to pave the way for yourself and figure things out. So I think that, for instance, in my TV career, I thought everybody worked in comedy and drama and back and forth. And so I was like, yeah, I'll work on Master of None and Succession and Watchmen and The Good Place. I just felt like it was all porous like that. And it only took me a couple of years to realize that most people didn't do that most people like specialized and said, I'm a drama writer, I'm a comedy writer. And to me, I sort of like never thought about those boundaries. And so I think that in some ways, coming in without a map or sort of like a guide helped me.
That is, probably. Then you don't know what to be afraid of.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
what I would be thinking.
Ignorance makes you brave sometimes.
Exactly. I know already, having talked to you, there's been some great moments, like when you screened the film at the Hamptons, and the Hamptons people were like, yeah, white people in the Hamptons did love it. Like, that is a great moment. There's a lot of, I think, black women coming up to you when Leslie Uggam says, I'm glad you're not white.
Yeah.
I know that's one that gets quoted back to you a lot.
Exactly.
But what has been the most satisfying sort of moment in this process of, like, because you guys, when you're nominated or trying to be nominated together, this is really like, this is your class that you're graduating with.
Yeah.
This is essentially kind of like graduation day.
Yeah,
This is the last day. You're all just winners. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and you're
exactly.
really in it together. So what has been the most satisfying moment about being in this group with these, incredible writers and directors?
Just meeting heroes of mine. That's like literally the greatest thing is being able to talk to Robert Townsend, this is a guy whose work I loved since I was a little boy, and to come across him at these kinds of events and I met Jonathan Glazer a couple weeks ago and was able to corner him probably for too long at this after party and sort of like talked his ear off about what a fan I was of his and sort of like asking him advice. And then I got a really, really sweet message after the nominations from Mel Brooks. Mel Brooks reached out to me and sort of
That's
sent
a pretty
me
great one.
Yeah, sent me like a 90-second video talking about how much he enjoyed the movie and like how happy he was that I was nominated because he said it's great and sometimes the great ones don't get recognized, so I'm really happy for you. And that is like, I grew up on Mel Brooks movies. My dad played Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein over and over and over when I was a kid for me. So Paul Schrader came out of one of the screenings in New York and told me that he really liked it and ended up putting the film on his year-end best of list. Like, it's just, I think that is meeting people whose work I really, really respect and admire and being able to talk to them about the work itself. And separate from the competition, separate from sort of who wins and who loses, it's just the camaraderie, it's an honor to sort of like be amongst these people and feel like I'm amongst peers, and it feels like that kind of warmth and that generous sort of exchange of ideas and exchange of just that, to me, that kinship has been the most gratifying thing overall.
I love this too. You have such a great cast. Like, again, with like Tracy and Issa. I mean, like, even like Brody. Like, I always tell people, I'm like, he's killing it, doing such a great job.
Yeah.
But I will also say too, the idea that now you're sort of like in the club and about the club, and you get to sort of navigate that. One of the people who was already there was Ryan Johnson. Like, he was part of your club, and now you're in this. I'd love for you to talk about his reaction, particularly because I know, like, whatever, not only as a producer, and obviously it's not just him, it's Ram and everybody over there, but that has to be a pretty satisfying moment to him. Like, this is probably the second guy that got to read it outside of you and your partner.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that Ryan's been super supportive all along the way. And I think that one of the reasons that the film has been able to flourish, and one of the reasons that we were able to make the film that we wanted to make, was because Ryan really sort of built a place that really trusts and believes in new voices and believes in filmmakers. This is Another big film this year for them was Chloe Domont's Fair Play, right?
Yeah.
And so Chloe had never directed a feature before, and this was her first feature. And so, you know, I think that those guys established an environment in which people like me could succeed. You know, this is. There's a lot of people who turned me down when I sort of like tried to make this movie. There's a lot of people who said it's too much of a risk for us. And I think that to come into T Street, where they have these huge successes with Knives Out films, you know, this Ryan's directed Star Wars, like he's working on the biggest projects in the world, and despite that, when I was in the offices and working with them, I was never made to feel like I was like sitting at the kids' table. You know, it was sort of like, despite the fact that my movie costs, you know, that his catering budgets probably
On Knives
Out are bigger than the entire budget of my film. I never felt like I was being sort of like shunted to this side with the junior varsity. It felt like we care about this film as much as we care about the Knives Out movies. And it really, you know, that starts at the top down. And so Ryan was just thrilled and enthusiastic when we were nominated, but he's been thrilled and enthusiastic throughout the entire process of making the movie.